In this video, we're going to show you how to install the rear upper control arm on your Nissan Murano located in the rear suspension of the vehicle. With the vehicle raised and supported, so it's good to use our 21mm socket to loosen and remove these lug nuts. Grab the wheel and remove it. Now the wheel removed, we want to come underneath here, and there's going to be a plastic skid plate or shield here. There's going to be a 10mm bolt and two 10mm nuts inside these pockets. And this one here on our particular vehicle is broken. So if you have that 10mm nut, go ahead and loosen and remove that. Be careful, there's usually a bunch of debris inside here. You don't want to get it in the mouth. There you go, pop it off. Now from underneath the vehicle, we're gonna go ahead and access the two bolts holding our brake caliper and bracket. 19mm bolt here, and then there's one on the top. Now on the bottom, if you have a 19mm box wrench or a gear wrench, which you're gonna wanna use. The reason for that is that you can't get a ratchet in here because of the forward link here. Now you can use the same wrench for the top if you want. I'm going to switch over to a ratchet because there's plenty of room up top to get to that one. Now when you do remove this bolt, the caliper and bracket is going to be loose and wobbly. You want to be careful, two things. Number one, you don't want this to fall and pull on the flex hose. Number two, you don't want that brake rotor on the front side to fall off. So be careful, be cautious. All right, remove that bolt. For now, I'm going to slide the caliper and the bracket off, and I'm simply going to set it right here. Just for now. I'm now going to remove the brake rotor from the front side and set that aside. Good, grab the brake rotor, wiggle it off and set it aside. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab our brake caliper and bracket. We're going to set that up, we're going to hang it. Our main goal is here is just to keep this out of the way while we work on the other components here. Now in the center here, you're going to find a cotter pin. You use a pair of pliers. You're going to bend out the tab on this here. Now cotter pins are a one-time use, so you're going to have to source a replacement cotter pin. Feed that through. Yep. With the cotter pin removed, let's go ahead and use our 32mm socket, loosen it and remove the axle nut. Now you do want to make sure that the spindle itself is free. You can see that our axle is moving. For any reason, if the spindle here for the axle is not moving, go ahead and spray it down with some rust penetrant. You can use a punch, put it in the center of the axle, and hit that with the hammer to break that free. Never smash the end of the axle. You can damage the threads if you happen to be reusing the axle. Now on the back side here, we have our ABS wire. There are 2 points of contact in the back on this bracket. There's rubber anchors here. You want to go ahead and grab the rubber and kind of gently twist this and pull it out. Don't pull on the wire. Older vehicles like this here, the wires are fragile and you don't want to break the wire internally, even though it looks fine on the outside. Now follow it around to the back of the knuckle. That's going to be a 10mm bolt. When you use our socket and driver, loosen and remove that bolt. All right, now that we have our bolt out, you want to grab that sensor. Go ahead and wiggle that out, twisting it gently. And then we're going to go ahead and just set that off to the side. Now from behind, it's going to be 4 bolts holding our wheel hub in place. There's one here, one up above, and one up above on this side here. Now these are 17mm. Using our 17mm socket and our ratchet, I want to go ahead and loosen these. On the top, we're going to use a short extension. There we go. Once those are broken free, I'm going to switch over to my electric driver unit here and zip those bolts out. All right, with those bolts out, let's move to the front. Now that the bolts are moved, on the front side, we're gonna use our hammer and we're gonna tap on the flange here, working our way around to try and work this out of the knuckle. We're gonna continue this here until our hub pops out. It is separating from the knuckle itself. Okay, slide it off of the spindle here. Set that aside. Make sure when you're setting this down, you do not set the back of this here onto anything metal. It can ruin the magnetic pickup on the ABS sensor. So right here we have our axle. I'm gonna push the axle in, and there's a plastic cover on the inside. I'm gonna use the axle to bump that out. And it's just a plastic collar here, and it has a notch in it for the ABS sensor to go into, and there's a little tab on the bottom that actually goes into the knuckle itself. So when we install it, we wanna make sure that is oriented properly. Now on the inside here, we have our CV axle that comes across to our rear differential. We need to pop that out. You can use a pry bar right on the lip here and just give it a quick little bump, like so. Now that we have this popped out, let's go ahead and take the CV axle and pull it out through the knuckle. Now at this point, we want to go ahead and grab our axle and we're going to pull it through the knuckle itself. As you pull this through, it's going to come out of the rear differential as well. So I'm going to hold the axle on the back side. I'm actually going to take some spray solvent and I'm going to spray the center here, get it on that boot. Okay, wiggle that and pull this through. Set that aside. Now we have the sway bar end link attached to the control arm. I'm going to come around in front of the shock using our 18mm socket, swivel, and we want to loosen and remove this nut. Remove that. I'm just going to push that sway bar end link out. Now on the back here, normally there is a cotter pin that goes through this. Ours is just missing. There's pieces broken off of it, and we're not going to be able to pull that out. But if you are able to work on that cotter pin, normally there's a little leg on it. You want to bend that little tab over, and then use your cutting pliers to grab the top of it and pull it out. Now cotter pins are one-time use, so you have to dispose of it anyways. Now we're going to use our 22mm socket on our impact gun. There it is. Control arm is now free there. Let's go ahead and move to the two inward bolts. Now the forward control arm bolt is going to be up between this gas tank and the cradle here, and the bolt is up here in the back. We're going to use an extension, swivel, and our 18mm socket on that bolt head and loosen that. All right, we'll get that nut off there. All right. Then the bolt is going to come out up in the cradle area. Kind of a tight fit, but you can get your hand up in there. Pull that out. Now the upper bolt here is right up here. There's a nut on this side here, and then the bolt head is on the other side towards the cradle itself. I'm going to use my impact driver here, 18mm socket. It is tight, and I did spray it down with some rust penetrant, let it soak for a while. And I'm going to put my box end wrench on the bolt. I'm going to try and remove this. And that was it. The 18mm deep socket helped me get more clearance in there with this particular tool. Pull that out. Remove that. Now we have to remember that the rearward bolt goes in from the back forward, and on the forward bolt, the bolt comes in from the front with the nut on the inside. So the two nuts are on the inside, bolts are on the outside. Let's go ahead and lift up the ball joint out of the knuckle, and we're going to pull the control arm out of the frame here. There we go. And we'll go ahead and remove our ABS wire bracket here. It's a 10 millimeter bolt. We're going to use our 10 mil socket. Loosen this bolt. All right, move that bracket. We're going to swap it over. You're going to take the bracket, make sure that the little tab fits inside the little hole here. Self-aligning. Get your bolt started. And then we're going to go ahead and snug it down. All right, let's go ahead and install the control arm. Let's go feed our control arm into place. Get that lined up inside the cradle. Drop our ball joint down inside here. All right, let's go ahead and get our bolts inside and through the control arm. Now we went ahead, ran our bolt through our wire wheel machine, and we put some anti-seize compound on the threads. Now I'm going to install the rear bolt first. It's the easier of the two. There it is. Push that right through. Now I get the bolt in. I'm going to go ahead and throw the nut on the other side just to get it started. I'll probably run it down as far as I can, but I'm not going to bottom it out. All right, now that we have that one in, we're going to go ahead and install the forward one, and that's going to be a little bit tougher to do because the bolt has to go up between the cradle and the gas tank. So let's go ahead and do that next. Now I'm going to grab that control arm and wiggle, there it is. Just wiggle it around until that bolt fits in. And push that through. I did the same thing there. I put anti-seize compound on the threads after I wire wheel the bolt. I just want to hold it there so I can go ahead and get a bolt on there. I'll get the nut on actually. All right. Now with those started, I'm going to go ahead and get the ball joint pushed in and get the nut started on that. All right, major installation tip for you. You ready? When you install the ball joint, make sure that the hole through the ball joint stud for the cotter pin is facing front to back. It's going to help you out tremendously when doing this here. It's not a must do, but it's very handy to do. I'm going to take a pick. I put it inside the ball joint cotter pin hole. And I'm going to pivot the ball joint so that that hole is going front to back. Drop that down inside. Now chances are you won't be able to get that in right away. So you're going to use a large pry bar and put it behind one of the control arms and the knuckle and pry this out and wiggle that until you can drop that ball joint down inside. You kind of really want that seated. There it is. Now at this point, I'm going to put some anti-seize on the threads of the ball joint. Install the nut. Now once we get the nut on, it's going to be safe for us to go ahead and snug that down because that is a pivoting component. All right, get my socket on there, we'll snug that down. Now the ball joint nut, we're going to go ahead and torque this to 62 foot-pounds. There is a range, it's 56 to 66. We're going to go to 62. All right, let's go ahead and install a fresh cotter pin. I'm going to go ahead and feed our cotter pin through here. I'm going to use my pliers to help me work that through. I'm going to use my pliers and fold that over. I'm just taking one of the cotter pin legs and folding that over, pushing that up in a position. I'm going to use my cutters, wearing safety glasses. Go ahead and snip off that excess. And then cut off the other leg here. If you want to, you can bend over both, but it's not necessary to keep them both there. Now, before we tighten our inboard upper control arm bolts, what we need to do is compress our suspension to what we call a neutral ride height. That means if we had the wheel on this vehicle and it was on the ground, our suspension would be compressed to its neutral ride height. If you tighten it in its full droop, and then we put our wheel on, we lower it down, that bushing and everything will be compressed on the control arms, and it's gonna cause resistance going back up, and it's not gonna give you the proper ride height. Could cause alignment issues, drivability problems, all that there, as well as premature failure to the control arm bushings. So we're gonna go ahead, use our pole jack. We're gonna raise this up till our vehicle just starts to move off of our lift. And once that's compressed to a neutral ride height, then we can go ahead and tighten and torque those inner bolts. All right, so we're gonna try and snug these down. All right, perfect, that's snug. Let's go ahead and get the one on the rear. I'm gonna torque these down to 87 foot-pounds. Now as we're tightening down the nut, our bolt head is spinning, so we're going to put our box end wrench or adjustable or open end wrench on the bolt side. There it is. So now we have our torque wrench on the forward nut here. We're going to go ahead and do the same and torque this one down. There it is. All right, now we have our control arm secured. Let's go ahead and remove our pole jack or your regular floor jack if that's what you used. Go ahead and grab your sway bar end link. You're gonna work that through. We're gonna get that nut started on the other side. And once we have that on, we're gonna go ahead and snug that down. All right, let's go ahead and torque that down. Let's go ahead and torque this down to 56 foot-pounds. I want to feed our axle through the knuckle. I want to go ahead and feed this into that rear differential. As I'm feeding that in, making sure that our axle goes through our knuckle. Now, in order for that to seat properly, you can take the axle and just kind of bump it, and you'll hear and feel it seat. Now, at this point here, we're going to install the plastic trim piece here. The little tab on the bottom actually goes into the knuckle itself, and it has a notch here for the ABS sensor. Pop that in and take our axle and kind of pop that through the center of it like so. Make sure that notch does line up with our ABS hole, and it does once that little tab is inserted there. Now let's get to install our wheel hub. While installing the wheel hub, it looks like a standard flange here, but 2 bolt holes are further apart than the other 2. So you definitely want to look at it and then identify it on here. the holes on the bottom are wider. I'm going to line this up, slide that over. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of the bolts here. I'm just going to reach around the back. I'm going to go for this one here, the upper right, just to try and get that lined up. I'm going to feed that through the back of the knuckle, and I'll be able to move this hub around to get that bolt to line up. My goal here is I want to get that bolt started, just a few threads. If you're having a hard time getting your hand back there to spin that bolt, simply grab the socket for that bolt with a little extension and you can spin that to help you get it on. I'm going to go ahead and get the other one up here. It doesn't matter at that point there which one you get started next, but our goal is to get all 4 of these started loosely, of course. You don't want to tighten them down. We want to have that little bit of maneuverability. All right, now that we have all 4 of these started, I'm going to raise it up and I'm going to snug these down in a crisscross pattern, pulling our hub into place. Let's go ahead and torque these hub bolts down to 65 foot-pounds. All right, let's go ahead and install our ABS sensor. Go ahead and grab your sensor. I'm going to grab a rag and just clean this off. Obviously inspect it. If it looks like it's damaged in any way, it's probably something you'll want to replace now. It's going to save you time later on, but ours is in good shape. I'm going to line this up. I'm going to gently wiggle this and push that in. Here it is. I'm going to grab our bolt, line this up, and we'll get that started. And we're just going to snug this down. Once that bolt bottoms out, we're just going to tighten it down just a hair bit more. All right, right there is bottomed out. That's it. I'm going to follow the wire back. I'm going to install the rubber grommets. Now, installing the wire harness itself, little trick is you can spray it down with some spray solvent. Spray the rubber down. And then go ahead and line that up, and it should make it a lot easier to slide it into place. Now you're going to rotate that rubber grommet and slide it in like so. Looks like our tab is a little bit bent here, so we do want to make sure that that is straight. There we go. Slides right in. Here we go. I'm going to install our axle nut. Now let's go ahead and run that down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to install 2 lug nuts. And we're going to utilize these here to torque the axle nut. We're going to torque this axle nut down to 92 foot-pounds. I'm going to use a pry bar between these 2. So go ahead and position these lug nuts accordingly. So you can go ahead and get that on there. Go ahead and remove these. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab a new cotter pin. I'm going to install a new cotter pin through. If you want to, you can take the other tab and bend that over the other way. It's not always necessary. I'm just going to go ahead and snip this off. All right, good. Brake rotor lined up. Push that on. Now let's go ahead and get our caliper and bracket set up on here. I'm going to remove my securing strap. Get that out of the way. You do want to make sure that your brake pads are pressed in all the way. Line that up and we'll slide that on. Now I like to go ahead and get my upper bolt started first. Just going to slide this around. There it is. Get that bolt started. And then we'll go ahead and get that lower bolt started. Line that up. Pull that bracket out until that bolt falls in. I'm going to go ahead and thread these in as far as I can by hand. Now from underneath, we're going to go ahead and use our wrench. Get in there and tighten that down. And then we'll do the same for the upper. All right, we have that bottomed out. Now I want to go ahead and torque this down. We're going to torque these to 62 foot-pounds. Now on the bottom one here, I'm using a crow's foot. Here we go. On the upper, I'm just going to use a deep socket. There it is. Good, line up our little splash shield here. I'm going to go ahead and get our bolt in here first. And gently snug that down. You'd normally have one up here. Ours is broken. There's no more stud left here. But if yours is there, go ahead and install the nut. I'm going to come on over here and snug down the bolt. Let's now install your wheel. Get that set up onto the studs. Now I want to go ahead and start all of the lug nuts by hand. That's going to help prevent cross-threading. Once we get all these installed, we go ahead and snug them down. And let's go ahead and snug them down. All right. Now let's go ahead and torque down our lug nuts to 80 foot-pounds. Now when doing this here, it's best to do this in a crisscross or star pattern. And you're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.